Hello, this is Erica with Launching Legacies. I want to welcome you to our daily devotional. Today we are going to be talking about an attitude, okay? And particularly how attitude is connected to maturing in faith. So I have attitudes at times, and I'm guessing that most of you also experience a time in which you have an attitude. And an attitude would be fine. You know, if it's an appropriate attitude, it would be fine if it was a good attitude, if it was healthy and productive. But we're going to talk about, for the next few days, we're going to talk about the attitude check that God had to give me as I was maturing in faith, and how that He keeps having to give me, I should say, as I mature in faith. Because there's some days I wake up and I'm just like, and I'm in one of those little funky moods, right? And this is part of being human, so I know that it's normal, but it's okay if you experience an attitude. What's not okay is if you continue in the wrong attitude, and we're going to talk about why that is important, that we have an attitude check if we're going to mature in our faith and serve the Lord. So for today, we're going to talk about the setup here of getting the right attitude, of the attitude check. So we're going to look at a passage of scripture that is often looked at in regard to Jesus and his teachings, but maybe not always looked at from this perspective. So we're looking at the Beatitudes, and that is Matthew, the 5th chapter, essentially is where the Beatitudes are found. But before we can get into any of the Beatitudes, we need to talk about what the context is for what Jesus is doing and why that's important for us as far as getting an attitude check. So we're going to go really deep, so I hope you enjoy the study. But before we get into the actual content, let's talk about what happens before. So Jesus is having an experience in which he starts to do miracles. He's performing these amazing miracles, and the people are knowing. They know, and so they are following him like mobs of people are following Jesus because they want to be well. And so what those mobs of people represent for us is the world, right? The world is broken. There's all kinds of people needing all kinds of real sincere help and truth and to be set free from their brokenness and to be loved and to be cared for. This is the condition of the world, right? Some are Christians, some are not Christians, some will become believers, and some will never become believers. But a lot of brokenness, right? Some of them are your family, right? Some of them are your loved ones, some of them are your children, some of them are your spouse, and they're broken, and maybe some of them are you. But there's a lot of brokenness, right, all around. And these mobs of people can see that Jesus is somehow exceptional. He's doing something that they have never seen done, right? He's performing miracles, and he's being kind, and he's changing the lives of people that nobody wanted to affiliate with, right? They're now becoming the people that he walks with, that he spends times with. And for them, it's amazing. And so you can only imagine if you really walked with Jesus on earth and saw him do the things that he would do, most of us would give up what we were doing and go ahead and follow him, right? Even if it was just to be well, right? Even if it was just to be stable, to be looking for something. These people were looking for something, and they were following Jesus. And so here he has all these masses of people behind him. But Jesus is smart, right? He knows about good leadership, and he realizes that at this point, he's going to move forward, right? He's going to go to the cross. He's going to die. He knows that that's coming. And so he needs to do some work in the people who are really the ones following him to continue the work, right? His disciples. And so he starts to, when all of these people are following him and you know, kind of trying to get something that he has to offer, he's like, you know what? Okay, you guys, let me take this few, right? Because he's about to start delegating. Let me take this little crowd here of disciples that I have, and we're going to go up the mountain. Right? And so a few of us are going to go not to the base of the mountain where all the people are, right? Because they all need help and they all need assistance. We're going to go to another level of the mountain, and we're going to get some insight about what it means to do the work that I'm calling you to do. So when we look at the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5, really these are the attitudes of those who serve. That's why this is an attitude check. And that's what Jesus was doing to the people that were going up the mountain. He's like, look, we need to get an attitude check here. Everybody can't serve, right? Everybody's not ready to just serve. You need your attitude to be in the right position in order to be a help to those people down the mountain. And why is he saying that? Because look, it's, if you have the wrong attitude, it's like you didn't even do it for the right reason, and that's important. And so he references that a lot, right? And even after the 5th chapter, when he gets to the 6th and 7th chapter, he hones in on making sure that what you're doing when you're serving is for God and not for yourself, right? Because there's a lot of people who feel like they're doing great things, people who do things in the name of Jesus, people who do things in the name of religion, or people who do things in the name of faith or spirituality. We meet them all the time. Oh, I'm a very spiritual person. Yes. And they're doing all these things in the names of whatever they're doing it in the name of. And God is like, I didn't tell you to do it. That's one. It seems like it would be a nice thing for a person to do. Sure, it may seem nice, but if I didn't tell you to do it, and you're doing it for your own, seeking your own fame, your own attention, you're doing it for your own reasons, then you're not doing it to serve me, because everything I'm doing is pure of heart, right? He says, have clean hands and a pure heart. And so he's like, look, if you're going to serve me, then that kind of service doesn't have anything to do with your own position. You're not doing things just because you feel like you want to do it. You're not advancing your own way in this thing. No, I need you to make sure that if you're going to serve these people that need help, right? Because they're looking down at all these masses of people while Jesus is talking. He's like, those people need you to have the right attitude. Like, you're going to need to check yourself. And so this is the same thing that happened with me, right? When I started to grow closer to Christ and my faith started to really mature, and I got along in that secret place, right? I went back to the garden times with me and Jesus, and I'm like, oh, this is how you made me. Oh, this is wonderful. And all of these things. And I started to let go of the things of the world. I still had to have an attitude check, right? I had to have a recognition point in which I was like, okay, wait a minute. Now, if I'm going to do this, yeah, I can't focus on my own repertoire. I can't focus on where I've been. I have to really see people as having a relationship with you, and I'm just kind of engaging in their relationship with you, right? Remember the partnership YouTube. You want to go back and watch that on YouTube if you want. But the partnership YouTube says I'm not taking things personal, right? Because it's not about me, right? So if you are acting out, or if you having a hard time, then I'm going to assume that that's between you and God, and that you guys will work it out. But as far as what me and God are doing, if he tells me to go to you, I'm going to go. If he says speak, I'm going to speak. If he says this, I'm going to do it, right? And so I'm developing and maturing in that. And in some ways, I'm really forsaking my own brokenness, right? In those ways, when I'm maturing with faith and it's just me and Jesus, I'm like the person on the bottom of the hill. I need some work, right? But I'm wounded, and I need him to excavate some places, and I need him to continue to dig. And we'll always have that work between us and Jesus, where we are the person that just is coming to him, needing him to do some work in us. And so when those times happen, I need the work with Jesus. But because I'm still being worked on, because I'm imperfect, sometimes I will have the wrong attitude. And God has to give me an attitude check. And so it's good to go back to the Beatitudes. And it's not quite what we think that they are. Like the vocabulary that's used in the Beatitudes, as we're about to get into them over the next week, you're going to be kind of surprised, pleasantly, I hope, to see that the terms don't necessarily mean what we've been thinking they mean if we look at the root of the words, right? The history of the words. But sometimes God needs to come and shake me and be like, Erica, you got the wrong attitude. He had to do it this past weekend. I was just fixating on this concept in my life. I was like, okay, well, I need to get this together because I'm out of control in this area, and I really need to work on this, and I need to shape it. And so my mind was so focused on this place in my life that needed correction that I was like, okay, no, I know I need to dig in, and everybody else on the outside may not see it, right? Because it's not their thing, but I learned to have this secret place with God. And so I was like, okay, look, there's this place in me that needs to be honed in, right? That needs to be shaped, that needs to be worked. I've got an issue, right? And because I was so focused on that area that I was trying to work out with the Lord, I was kind of having an attitude. So every time something came up, I was kind of like going back to this same spot that I'm trying to work on, right? I was bringing my private into the public, and it made me have a little bit of an attitude. And I was like, oh, at the end of the weekend, or last night, right, Sunday night, I thought to myself, oh man, I had a bad attitude. Like I was thinking about this thing that's important to resolve, right? And I was thinking about, what I need to do with the Lord to get this right. But at the same time, I wasn't mindful of the place that I was and the people I was around, and the things I should have been saying to them, or the way I should have been engaging them wasn't necessarily the right position because of this thing that I was focused on. So I needed to change my direction and attention back to God, right? Not to my issue that I wanted God to resolve, or not to my area that I needed God to work on, but back to him to recognize what he was doing in the environment if he wanted me to serve, if he wanted me to speak. Oh yeah, I wasn't counseling, that's true. And I wasn't teaching, that's true. But I was still serving. And that's the important part, is that sometimes when we need an attitude check, it's not because we're doing something quote unquote wrong, but we're not serving, right? We're not serving the people that are around us. Instead, we're serving ourselves because we're focused on ourselves, or we're trying to do something for ourselves. And basically the Beatitudes is telling us, hey, don't get caught up in that self-centered place, right? Even if it's for good, even if it's for change, even if you're trying to grow, don't get caught up in your self-centered place and forget that I brought you here to serve. Every time I take you somewhere, it's to serve. You think you're resting, but there is going to be a place of service in that. So even in your rest, make sure that you have your attitude right, because I'll work on the things that you need to get fixed, worked out. I'll do that with you. But I want you to be diligent to make sure that you're always focused on what I'm asking you to do, which means we got to have an attitude check. Now, I don't know if this applies to you, right? I can say that for myself, it applies, okay? Because there's oftentimes I get caught up in my own, world of Erica. But if it applies to you, then great. This is what I want to challenge you and myself to do. So you and I are both going to work on this challenge, is that we need to get to the place in which we recognize that every attitude is not the attitude of a servant. We need to both get to this place and recognize that any just distractions and being busy is not an acceptable way of saying I'm just going to have an attitude. God doesn't excuse that here. Jesus doesn't excuse it. Believe me, Jesus was one of the busiest people on the planet, right? He was the most desirable person at that time because he was doing all this healing work. But he doesn't have a bad attitude, right? He takes rest when he needs rest. He does work when he needs work. But he doesn't say, well, because I'm so overwhelmed, I'm just going to have this bad attitude. He doesn't do all that, right? And so because he doesn't have that bad attitude, he's not giving us permission to either. And so our job right now, as we challenge ourselves to go into the Beatitudes, and believe me, it's going to be a challenge for me as well as it is for you, but it's a process that we must go through. As we look at our attitude, reframing our attitude, and give ourselves an attitude check, then we need to really think about what places we've been accepting having a bad attitude, or an attitude that wasn't honoring to Christ, and what areas and what situations around what people, maybe about what things. We need to hone that in. Right now, we need to hold that attitude captive. And as we read the Beatitudes, we're going to figure out if that attitude is acceptable in the outline that Christ says is the attitude of a servant. Real simple, right? May not be fun, may not be easy, but real simple. We're going to literally say, okay, this is the kind of attitude that I have at times. Now, does it line up with what the Beatitudes is saying? What Christ is saying a servant needs to have, right? Because remember, you're at a place in which you're preparing to work with all of those people, right? You're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus. So are you ready to be the hands and feet of Jesus? What's your attitude like? Because that's the first thing. He's like, okay, hold on. Let's just check these attitudes real quick. And so it's a challenge for us. And I hope you're going to be ready to go through the rest of the Beatitudes. But I want you to frame your mind and maybe go back and read Matthew chapter 4. That'll give you good context. He's like, look, I need you to feed my sheep. I need you to do what I'm calling you to do. I need you to be ready to serve. He's setting them up for it. So you are set up too now, right? You're set up to get this place together. So I encourage you. I'll be praying for you. Please be praying for me. I'm going to be praying for myself. Trying to work on this attitude, making sure that we are doing the thing that God is calling us to do at this time for the people he wants us to serve, right? All right. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow. And don't forget to check that attitude.